This video is to help educators understand how to use the Pass the AKT package. This package is designed to help candidates of all abilities pass the AKT. Although some candidates are using the package as individuals, it's really best used in conjunction with their educators. My name is Mark Coombe and I've been a working GP and GP trainer for 20 years. During that time, I've also worked on a number of educational projects, including training packages to help candidates through the AKT. Amongst other things, I designed the format and content of the RCGP's AKT Day courses. Currently, around 75% of all first-time takers pass the AKT. But what about the rest? Why do they fail? Failure causes huge psychological distress for the candidates and can be extremely expensive if the deanery needs to fund extensions. Over the last few years, I've worked closely with failing candidates to work out how to best maximise their score and get them through the exam. So here's a list on this slide of a number of causes of failure. They often don't even access the RCGP website, which has got a lot of useful information about every aspect of the exam. They often sit the exam at the wrong time. If you look at the statistics from the RCGP, at the moment, ST2 first-time takers seem to have a much higher pass rate than ST3. And why is that? Because actually we should pass, or our pass mark should get better the later we take it in training. Well, actually it appears that the most motivated, the most well-prepared take it in ST2, so it's an artificial statistic. And so really candidates should take it when they're ready, and the later that all of them take it, the higher their mark in the AKT would be. Failures often have unfocused learning, and they often say to me, I just did questions, and I've just been working with a group of regular failures on their third and fourth attempts, and all they said was, I've just continued doing questions, and they don't seem to have worked out if they just continue doing questions, they will fail again. They have limited planning, and they have often very little feedback. They get very little support from their peers and often little support from the training community. They often have poor technique, and that includes things as basic as not finishing the exam, and they review badly. So they go back and review lots of questions at the end of the exam and then go and change them wrongly. So they put a question right the first time and then they go and put it wrongly. And a lot of them go on lots of courses, which we like to call course tourism. There really is no point in going on more than one course. And so the 75 that pass often say to their peers, I just did questions, but actually they don't. If you watch them carefully, they've got long established learning styles that involve doing questions to initiate a series of learning opportunities. And the ones that fail often don't have these established styles, and so the package is set up to give them a step-by-step guide through learning and how to do the AKT. So these are the steps. They start with watching video 1 at the top of the screen, and I'll show you what the screen looks like in a minute. And that's advice about exam technique and when to sit. They then watch video 2 and 3, which is on stats and admin, and both of these take up 10% of the exam and are often areas which candidates do badly on. They then join an AKT discussion forum and community in which they can share their anxieties but also ask questions, and if there are questions that the community doesn't answer, they'll come to me or one of the admin team who will answer them. They summarise the BNF, and we get them to use the BNF as a very, very useful reference material. And often your good learners will have the AKT open, but will have the BNF open while they're looking at the library modules on the package. And they access the FourteenFish library modules. And when they do those, they can do questions, AKT-style questions before and after. They can do mock AKTs whenever they like, but we encourage them to do them relatively at the beginning to get an idea of their learning needs, but also their overall score. And then after they've done a few months of learning, and then nearer when they're expecting to take it, to get an idea of their educational progression. We're expecting them to continue form a learning plan and to update that plan, and they can go around this cycle and watch the videos as many times as they like. So this is what the passing the AKT package looks like on the 14Fish website, but it is evolving all the time, and we want to make it as good an experience and as easy to use as possible. So when you look at one of the library modules, so here's an example, this is one on UTIs or urinary tract infections. Before each module, the learner should take a test. As you can see here, you just click on Take a Test Now. And the test is then repeated at the end of the module, and then you can also start a new discussion. You can see on the right hand side of the screen there it says Start a New Discussion, and they get an opportunity to discuss with their peers or us. The library covers all major clinical topics, so asthma and diabetes, HRT, everything that you would expect. But a number of the modules are focused on the areas of previous poor performance that come in exam after exam after exam, and you can expect them again this year. All the modules are constantly updated. We intend to add 2 to 3 new modules every month. From our experience to date, the candidates that get the most out of the library modules set aside about an hour for each. The videos last about half an hour, and during the video the learner can either make notes and look them up at the end, or even pause the video and do some looking up, whether it's Google or BNF or on a guidance they've got to hand. So at the end of the hour they should have some notes, some learning points that they can refer to later, and an idea of how much they've learnt by their post-module scores. And certainly if they're getting less than 80% in an AKT style question just after they've done the module, they should be looking at doing it again, not necessarily immediately, but fairly soon. When the learner is on the package, we start to gain lots of very useful information about them. We start to develop a good idea of their strengths and weaknesses, which areas they should concentrate on, and how they compare to their peers. Their scores before and after modules, and whether they're achieving scores that should pass the exam. An unexpected consequence of watching some of the first people on the package has been that we've been able to see when they watch the modules and their level of engagement, and whether or not they watch a module in one go or whether they watch it in little bits. So have a look at this example. So this is someone who has, so it's a learner who's only watched 6 modules in the 2 months, and you can see a list there. And just look in more detail at the top one, which is the 6-week check. So the learner watches the whole video starting at 23:01, so 1 minute past 11 in the evening. And now, is that the best time for them to be learning, and why are they doing it at 11? And this is the next shows their pre and post test scores on the 6-week check. And the tick indicates the score before watching the video, which is 0, and a post-test score of 60%. So they've definitely learned a lot from the module, but they probably could have done with watching it again. And when I met this learner, it was a female registrar who was struggling with a home situation and 3 young children. So as their educator, you may want to advise them to delay their exam and adjust their work schedule. When the Deanery put a group of learners on the package, the learners consent to us using their nominated educators. And we do this in the form of a monthly spreadsheet which looks something like this. As you can see, there's quite a variation in this small group. I only took a little section. So there's quite a variation in this small group. And that their usage and test scores may trigger some discussion, further investigation and possibly intervention. You would certainly not want the 2 candidates scoring in the 50s to sit the exam soon. We also email learners regularly with feedback and encouragement. I've recently been involved with some learners on their last attempt, and I wanted just to talk you through 3 case studies to try and make it a bit clearer. All 3 examples have got their exam in 5 weeks' time and have been on the package for 2 months. So this case study 1, this learner has worked really hard and is fully engaged with the package. If they continue to do this with a focus on practice admin where they scored badly and not worrying too much about leaving time to review at the end of the exam, they'll certainly pass. So their score in the last AKT was pretty poor, 54%. You're expecting the pass mark this year was about 69%, so you want them to be scoring 70% and over to have a good chance of passing. Their pre-module tests average score was 40, which is quite low, but their post-module tests were 86, which shows that the modules are doing the trick. They've just done one AKT and their single mock AKT score was over 70%. As I say, they're poor in practice admin and they were a neutral reviewer. So whenever they go back to review questions they weren't sure of, they changed as many for right as wrong. So actually there's no need for them to go back and review in any great detail, and they certainly shouldn't be reviewing many cases. This is case study 2, and this second one has engaged with the package reasonably well. They've spent 13 hours and 30 minutes on the site. They started with a very low score, actually not as bad as the last one, but they started with a low score in the last AKT of 62%. And those low scores have been echoed by their pre-module test scores, which they're going around 35%. However, the modules seem to do the trick for this group. Once again, the post-module score is 90%, which is a good rate. That's what we were hoping for. And we also noticed that they tended to review well. So at the end of the exam, they go back and change wrong answers into right answers, and they were reviewing somewhere in +8. So they were changing 8 questions the right way around out of 100, which is an awful lot in 200. It's perhaps even more important to know if people are negative reviewers, because they rush through the paper and go back and actually reduce their scores. So this is case study 3, and this learner hasn't really engaged with the site at all. They've watched no modules and they've attempted one full mock AKT. They did it quite quickly. The real exam is 3 hours and 10 minutes to do 200 questions, and so we'd expect them to do it in about 1 hour 35 minutes. And so they did it quite quickly and they didn't review at all, so it didn't really help us with their exam technique. The last real exam was a score of 58, which is poor, and this person scored 48 in our AKT. We think, having a look at overall the general scores so far and looking at some of the trainers that have done it, that actually our AKT is a little bit harder than the real exam, but that's a good thing. And so if you were their educator, you would certainly want to be having a chat with them and finding out if they're not using the site, what are they doing? And with a score like that, they certainly shouldn't be sitting the exam anytime soon. I hope you found this video explaining the AKT package useful, and you feel that you understand how to use the package to help your learners. Don't hesitate to contact me if you've got any questions, and at the end I'll put up a slide with the current costings. But at £8 a month, I hope you'll agree you're spending your money well. But for the first time in preparation for the AKT, we can watch what our learners are doing and how they're doing it and help them in a meaningful way. There's no longer any need for candidates to sit the exam and fail because they're not properly prepared.